Every boss that makes it to my list of favorites typically starts out as a rough initial experience, and I'm proud to say that the Divine Beast Dancing Lion makes it into my personal top 10 list of Elden Ring boss fights. Despite the many issues I found with the many hours I spent analyzing the combat design, when I first saw this creature in the trailer for the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion, I immediately was drawn to its eerie and uncanny presentation. It would easily fit into a classic Castlevania game. What makes this design especially unnerving is due to the fact that it's a lion costume being operated by two beings. What I found humorous is that some people had premonition that there would be a second stage due to these beings being underneath a costume, so they must pop out for the final fight. However, this isn't the case. I think it's reasonable to believe that this came from the Malekith fight, where this type of reveal was present, including other fights changing drastically in general. My build and challenge details that I applied for myself will be in the description. I'm going to proceed with explaining each attack I could find. Since the DLC is arriving 2 weeks of age upon the writing of this script, not every attack has been labeled by the community, so I'm required to label them myself. I will be addressing attacks in order of when they appear in my footage. Also, whenever an attack is mentioned, I will address its elemental differences and strategy adjustments if necessary. Some attacks are not present in the following footage due to phase durations, which typically has some attacks repeating that doesn't allow the opportunity for the attacks to display. Wind Blast typically starts upon entering the arena and can be avoided by simply walking to the left or right. The punish window is very small, so a fast weapon is recommended. Otherwise, follow-up attacks more than likely will make an impact. Other than the weak punish window, this attack has a generic telegraph that looks like a regular bite attack, which also has a poor telegraph which could lead to problematic outcomes for evasion due to misreads. This applies for the frost variation as well. The lightning and especially deathblight variations, however, are more hazardous due to how it spreads. Bite attacks was the most difficult part to figure out for me, especially one in particular which prevented me from the most punish opportunities. And that's the one which occurs when you attack the head directly. This bite attack has an awful telegraph that only allows a split-second reaction, and that's not an exaggeration. Even when I had stamina in full readiness, the attack would strike me if I didn't dodge within the first frame of animation. Thankfully, I found a bypass, which is something I should have made a connection with. Back in 2023, I defeated the Lion Guardian in Stormveil Castle as if it was a boss. I had to learn its entire moveset with the Colossal Sword, and one thing I had to focus on was attacking the posterior side of the Lion Guardian, which turns out to be the very same strategy I used to avoid that pesky bite attack. Perhaps it's intentional to force the player to not rely purely on attacking the heads since there are two beings inside, so I suppose it makes sense to attack them both for the final defeat. The second fastest bite attack is more generous and it occurs when you're in front and on the sides. It also comes in combos. The most important interaction with this attack came from punishing the very back of the Divine Beast, where it bites twice, requiring a nice sequence of evasion. The leaping bite has a surprisingly short range and impact radius. I found it was best to avoid punishing this attack just due to the fast recovery time for follow-up attacks, which has a high failure rate. The lunging bites has short and long range variations. I found that punishing the long range during its rotating focus back towards the player was a decent punish window, but not exactly the most reliable. Now of course we have the elemental variations. Lightning puts a lot of focus on timing with the player dealing with bites along with lightning strikes. That can be out of view, making the situation almost a guessing game. If you want to apply high aggression, my final approach to this was to evade towards the camera, and that tossed me out of the area of effect. Another very important tactic was to stay away from getting cornered. The frost has an inward effect from the bite attacks, however the strategy does not change. The wind either has no hit detection or it's very generous. I never had maneuvering issues like the others, so it looks more dangerous than it actually is. There doesn't appear to be any death-like variations for bite attacks. Spinning Whirlwind is probably my favorite attack in the whole fight. It looks weird but very approachable, and I still had to refine how I navigate around it for better stamina management. Another reason why I love this attack is because it has the best punish windows. This attack also appears fairly regularly, so it keeps me engaged. The only time I wouldn't punish this attack is the Deathblight variation, which spreads too wide for punish viability. The Frost variation contains a large blast of frost at the head-raising animation. Moving Whirlwind is a slower and non-stationary version of the previous attack without the twisting movement starter. The punishes have the same outcome except for one detail I forgot to mention. When this attack has finished, it is best to aim an attack to the right, and when the other has finished, it is best to aim an attack to the left, due to the Dancing Lion's angling position being slightly different. Tail Whip is a small attack that's not a huge issue, and it happens whenever, but usually during biting combos. Since I eventually kept distant most of the time, I never had any further conflict. Ground Smash has two versions. One is slow, with only a head slam, and the other is fast with a head slam and a follow-up head-raising blast radius. I'm uncertain what triggers the faster version. I noticed that it appears to occur when I applied higher aggression, though it also occurred at a distance, so it may just be random like the Tail Whip. The Frost variant has a massive burst of ice waves, like the Ice Stomp, so it requires a good observation to punish properly. Bite Grab has one of the best telegrabs I've seen in the From Software lineup in terms of grab attacks, which are usually too sudden or has a large player detection window. I also love the chopping sound cue to help identify the telegraph compared to the opening animation of Ground Smash, which would easily get confused without that detail. The punish window works well with all elemental variations. Elemental phase transition technically has an opening, however it can be risky. There's an AoE during this moment, so be advised when attempting an approach, especially afterwards, because the follow-up can be quick. The surrounding lightning opening may look dangerous, but is actually harmless. Not once did I get tagged by one of these strikes. I don't know if that's even possible. Ice Stomp is an elemental special for the Frost phase. It's a fun attack with a good telegraph, and I wasn't even aware of the gaps on the outer waves in my punish attempts of the fight. If you position yourself well enough, you could get a great punish with a well-timed jump attack. Backflip confused me at first, because it was sudden and I simply wasn't used to seeing a boss do that, but when I remembered that I have seen it before back in the Dark Souls DLC with Caelid, however, it is a rare attack, so I never had to properly prepare for it. The Wind variant shoots out a vortex similar to what Godric the Grafted sends out during one of his wind attacks, but this one is larger and the tracking is very low in comparison. Tornado is an elemental special for the wind phase. Like the vortex projectiles mentioned previously, the tracking is so low that getting hit would have to be from simply not paying attention. Too bad it doesn't bounce around the room for a little bit, but I would probably complain about it. Lightning Bolt is an elemental special for the lightning phase. The tracking is just low enough to jump, evade, and it typically comes in 2 strikes, so prepare to have momentum if you decide to jump out of its range instead of rolling. Elements Unite is a moment typically towards the end with a lightning bolt. The first half of the spinning whirlwind then ends with the Frost variation of Ground Smash. This shouldn't be a big problem once you've mastered the singular versions, except for the Frost variant of Ground Smash, which is unique to this one moment. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I believe that's it for attacks. If I miss one, then I apologize. As for generalized opinions on each phase, the first phase is my favorite. It keeps me engaged with mostly fun attacks with rewarding punish windows, and I wouldn't have minded at all if the whole fight was like this. I do have problems with the bite attacks, however with the right rhythm they can be dealt with reasonably. Elemental phases could be so much better if they didn't rely so heavily on bite and projectile attacks being the standard, while the more punishable attacks are held back, making the phases less engaging. With that said, I still have a lot to learn with punishing in these elemental phases when the right attacks do transpire. The Death Blight phase in the second Divine Beast fight found in the ancient ruins of Ra is so bad that you're better off running away until it wears off, which actually doesn't take long. The basilisks added when the Deathblight phase initiates is unnecessary and doesn't add anything fundamentally interesting to the Dancing Lion other than pure inconvenience. And I don't know why they thought Deathblight was a good idea in the first place when you can't even stick around to punish attacks without getting killed by Deathblight. The majority of players I've seen fight this version typically stand far away or use projectiles from the platform above. I will say that in my opinion, the Ancient Ruins of Raw Arena is the best for complementing the moveset for the Dancing Lion. The mixture of nature and structure speaks more conceptually, matching the design of the boss itself poetically. The arena for the main fight is way too small for the moveset. It's like fighting Calamine in Pinwheel's Arena from Dark Souls for an exaggerated point. Before I wrap up, I do want to mention that this boss is possible to achieve without rolling. I personally didn't aim for that achievement due to the extra time it would take, especially with my weapon of choice, but it's definitely something I want to aim for sometime later. I do want to take this time to give a YouTuber named Mouse in a Tutu a shout out. This fellow challenger has helped me out for refining strategies in general with displaying how much comfort is obtainable in combat. I find that studying these videos helps reduce practice time since I do have other things to take care of outside of gaming. So I want to thank Mouse in a Tutu for offering combat details that would otherwise take me months to find. Definitely give the channel a look if you're interested in self-imposed challenges or want to achieve them yourself but you don't have much time to practice during the day. I hope everyone found this video essay interesting and insightful. I appreciate any comments and concerns addressed. Thank you, and remember to practice for perfection.